All right, guys, today we're working on the graduated bob. That graduation is the most important element of this, this training, because that's the technique that we're gonna be using to work on that head shape going into the head from the occipital bone down in the back. That's a key element to a lot of our shorter stuff. But in this haircut, this is the difference between the inverted and the graduated bob is just that hole out over the ear that the graduated bob gets, as opposed to the inverted bob, which allows us to stay somewhat heavy over the ear into that length. This allows us to go higher, chin length or higher. You can't really do that with the inverted bob. So this is just a loose shape. I don't have any hair product in it, but just working on that shape coming down, just thinking about that. I did a point cut over comb here in the back just to like blend that through, and then on a real person you can tighten this a little bit more. The mannequin doesn't really allow for that too nicely. And then using that slicing technique, the wet slicing technique. Both of these I think are going to be in breakout videos, and then the sweeping fringe, that's also going to be on a breakout video. And just go through and watch those videos and use those techniques to get this haircut the rest of the way there for you. But more importantly, in this video today, just concentrate on that graduation and then what it does behind the ear. That's the most important part of what we're doing here. So just watching shape the whole time. Alright guys, today we're going to be working on the graduated bob. So this is the bob that doesn't keep that weight behind the ear. We're actually going to remove that weight behind the ear. So just going to turn that graduation with the head shape around, and it kind of leaves a little bit of a hole over the ear. So when I'm first attempting to do this haircut, it's basically like I'll cut the shape first, on the interior first, and then when it's done, I'll kind of like shape the exterior line. If it's a guest that I've already cut this haircut on, or whose hair is shorter, I'm probably gonna cut that exterior line first. So that's good to know. There's not like a set way. It's based on what their length is at that time. So I'm gonna make that decision right off the bat. If it's short enough, I'm probably gonna cut the shape in. If I have my druthers, I'm gonna cut the shape in, the exterior shape first, and then work on the exterior or the interior. So that's really all you need to know about it. So this technique, we're basically just going to show you the exterior line. I don't really get into doing the full haircut. I do usually put some layers and stuff in this, but mostly what we're trying to do is layer. It's above the occipital bone and then back down to the top back of the ear. So we're just trying to work off of this head shape here and create some sort of shape from entrance point here to my exit here. And I'll typically work down always from the entrance point to the exit, because I'm mostly concerned about where that weight line starts to build. And if you notice here, this would be my occipital bone. That would be kind of the widest point of the back of the head. What I want to do is go up. There's a little bit of a turn. I want to go up above that and start the shape coming in with the head shape above that, so it softens slightly, because the head turns back in. So it's going to soften out when this drops, it's going to soften out my corner a little bit. So I won't have this like ledge here. Also, I point cut, that also removes the ledge. So most of my cutting here is going to be to make sure that that entrance point and that ledge that's created from the top of the start of the graduation, it's soft enough that I don't see it. So I'm going to try to blend that out as much as I can. I'm usually going to blend that out a lot more with dry cutting at the end. So just keeping that in mind, that's kind of what I'm doing. And then I'm also trying to bring that ledge somewhat in line with where I want that length to end up on towards the front of the face. So that's why I like to go ahead and cut this in if I have the option, because I can go ahead and put my shape in right on that transition between the back and the front. So I can go ahead and carve that in, and then I can do my layering, my graduation, move that around the head, and then afterwards I can do my sides and then work on that transition between the back and the front, just cleaning it up to a visual taste and a visual perspective. So I tend to not try to I try to know what area I'm going to, but mostly I try to let the hair itself dictate how I do the connections and that sort of thing, because everyone's texture is so different, and there might be more weight in one area with someone. You might want to change or manipulate that transition based on how much weight they have naturally. So just leaving all kinds of options open here, but the most important thing to know is we're going to work on our shape in that general direction. And that's all graduation is this that tucked in on the back of the head. Nothing more, nothing less. It's kind of that graduation basically is going to dictate how tight I really want it on the bottom of the head and just give me shape coming up. And it's basically the basis for most short haircuts, because you're going to always tighten it in with the head shape in the back with most short haircuts. So it's a great technique to have. I don't typically do the graduated bob very often. It's not a haircut I think is all that pretty, so I try to, and it's just a personal opinion, so I try to steer clear of it as much as I can. I still do have clients that have this haircut, so you do what you want to do. All right, so my first section is going to be a vertical section. So if I draw this so if I'm drawing this here and my section is there, and what I've sectioned out here is entirely everything that's going to come in towards the head, right? That's the only reason for that section. So I'm not a big fan of turning this into 2 or 3 sections and then doing subsections inside of that. I really like to cut based on what I'm getting visually. So I'm going to come in, my section is going to be about the size of the comb, and then I'm going to point cut somewhere down that line and just point cut this line out. What I'm going to do here is hold down tighter to the head with my knuckles and come out along my line and work it down, and my head is going to be off to the side so I can see this profile as I cut. If you're standing behind it, you're not going to be able to see this profile shape, right? And so when we cut, we're cutting hair, we're always looking at shape. That's the most important thing that we could ever do visually, is constantly be looking at shape. So what I'm going to do here is start to come out vertical sections. Okay, so this is really interesting here, is I am trying to get, with my third vertical section here, I am trying to get the corner of that nape in there. All right, this section here, I tend to turn and use this bottom as my exit point. So I kind of turn with the head using that, and then I'm basically trying to keep I'm trying to keep this hair here kind of tight to the head. So if I want to save that weight there behind the ear, I can just keep turning this along with the back vertically. I'm basically, if I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to turn the head, so I'm going to come in with the hairline basically and do the same shape, and that's going to give me that carve out behind the ear. All right, so that's all you really need to know. And these things, they travel and they stay vertical, and all we're doing is watching our shape from the sides as we put them in. Nothing else matters. This stuff up here is going to come down, and you can point cut into that and keep it soft as you come through. So we're just basically going back to 1 length sections after this and coming through and then cutting this wherever it falls. So if this is here, it's going to fall like somewhere in here with your weight line, right? And you're going to do that. And I'm typically going to cut that really, really soft. I'm not going to come in and Vidal Sassoon it and get super ledgy. I don't really like ledgy shapes. Just a personal preference. I stay away from them at all costs. But if you're going for that, ledgy shape, you want to just hold it right down as close to shape fall as possible, and basically bang in the heaviest ledge you can if that's the shape you're going for. For me, I'm gonna like kind of elevate these sections and point cut into them. Elevating for softness, deep point cutting to keep a loose line. Pretty simple. And then as I come through, I might make the decision, depending on their density, I might make the decision to stop deep point cutting and slowly come out to more tip point cutting as I come forward and I walk to shape fall towards the face. So that's just something you're gonna do as a personal preference, but it is an option. And you can start to see all of the the decision making that go in here. If you want to put an inversion and keep more weight behind the ear, where you're point cutting, how deep you're point cutting. If you want to switch into point cut over comb in the nape, or scissor over comb in the nape, or clipper over comb in the nape, whatever you're going to do to get it in as tight as you want it here at this nape area. So you have all these decisions. I typically will go ahead and scissor cut this as tight as I can, and then I'll come back in dry and do all my texturizing and get and tighten that nape if I want. So pretty simple. I typically tend to leave this a little bit more natural at the bottom. I don't do a bunch of like shapes in there and like get it all square and like do anything crazy. I'm usually trying to get like a soft blend out on that. It just depends on how much hair you're leaving there. So this is the graduated bob, and I'm gonna do this on a mannequin to show you how it's done. All right, guys, I'm gonna try to show you this profile so you understand what I'm talking about here. I'm gonna take that center section and use that as my guide. This haircut has been both over processed and razored to death already, so there's gonna be some short bits in there, but that's okay, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just gonna pick out where I want my angle to start and start walking it down. So I've cut that line. Now what I'm gonna do is walk the next one down. We call that walking. So basically my scissors don't leave, or my fingers don't leave, my grip is still there. I just go behind, and then once I get the hair to my grip, I can just slide behind it and get that in there. So all I'm doing is kind of going into that shape. If your fingers are smaller, you can get in there and really get after that bottom. Just keeping that real soft, making sure that my shape is doing what I want it to do from a profile perspective, and then just coming into that head. So now that's my first section. My second section, I'm just gonna travel it over one section. I'm not pivoting off of anything, I'm just traveling it over. And what I'm really watching here is I'm watching shape more than anything else. I'm not trying to use the hair previously, even though I'm taking some of it, but that's just mostly to make sure that all the hair on the head gets cut. But what I'm doing is traveling the section over, cutting center of section. If I take some of the previous hair over, I'm basically just kind of inverting it. So that's not really what I'm doing. What I'm trying to do is use some of this top entrance point here to give me an idea of where my shape was, and all I'm continuing to do is think about how I want, where I want my entrance point, where I want my exit point, what I want that shape in between to be. So just continuing down, and it's very visual, so I'm going to go back in and look at it visually a few times. I'm center of section, very loosely holding the hair, and then keeping it point cut and really walking it down. And then all I do is constantly look at it and make sure that the shape that I want is in there. All right. My third section, I'm going to get right on that corner. I'm going to turn it one more time. And notice that my whole body shifts behind my section, and my head is off to the left so I can see that shape. And then I'm just, once again, working that shape into a little bit of a gap there from the over process of this mannequin. Fun times. Walking that down, making sure that shape is there. And here's that decision making behind the ear that I was talking about. So here, now I have the decision that I can bring this all back to my previous section and invert one section out and get a little bit of weight behind the ear, or I can continue to turn it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this, stay behind that section. Well, basically for me, because I'm right-handed, I'm going to just kind of turn my hands over on top, and I'll turn this around so you can see it. I'm going to turn this around, and basically all I'm going to do is kind of walk up with my fingers holding from above this time. And I can walk up, I can walk it down, it just doesn't matter. I kind of know that once I cut this, I'm going to have this nice weighty line kind of coming out towards my corner. So ooh, just a touch of weight right there. Gonna cut that off. So. All right, so that's the side so far, and you can see that it's starting to come in. And even with the like dreadful nape hair of the mannequin, you can start to see that shape starting to come in. So all I have to do now is walk my one length forward, and you can see that shape is already starting to come in. Pretty simple. I'll come back and cut that in a minute. All right, just coming in vertically here on my next section, combing it out, just following my sections down. Staying as vertical as I possibly can. I'm trying to stay out of the way of the camera. I hope you guys can see that. Keeping my head left and keeping my head straight up so I don't do anything weird like turn my head and then my balance gets turned. So this section, making sure I incorporate my whole corner here in this vertical. Just walking that down, keeping my cut loose, more or less. More than anything, I'm just watching my shape, making sure I'm looking down the road, making sure there's balance coming out. Now I'm on that same vertical on this side. So on this side it's a little easier because I am right-handed, just following that shape down the hairline. That's it, easy peasy. It's gonna get like a nice soft blend all the way down, nice weight line, getting tight in there. I'm gonna come back in and tighten that up a little later. It's a little easier on the mannequins to tighten it up after I'm done. So just coming here, I never separate, I never work on one side or the other. There needs to be balance to the hair, so I'm always looking at its balance. And all I'm doing here is kind of looking at the balance and deep point cutting into that line just to soften that line up a little bit. And you start to see with the shape from the side that that's banging in there nicely. And just following that shape right around. And just following it right down. This shape, I'm basically going to come right to the bottom of the chin and just hug that chin a little bit. Right, and so now you start to see this gap from behind the ear. And on a real person, this is much tighter, so you would just come in here and just hold it off on the neck and make sure that that gets softened up to what you want it to be. All right, just working same section, same feel on the strong side here, and just moving it forward. On the strong side, there's going to be 3 sections. On the weak side, it's going to be 2. If their hair was extremely dense, I would probably increase that to a 4th section on the strong side, a 3rd section on the weak side. But typically that's where I'm at. I'm at 3 sections on the strong side and 2 sections on the weak side, and just watching that shape come through. All right, on this weak side, just walking this shape down. I'm lifting up slightly for elevation, really getting in there with my point cutting and softening that line right on top of it. Now this line is coming out really solid on this mannequin. So I'll probably go in and do a little slicing here wet just to break it up and soften it. But just making sure that my shape is all in there and it's all good. You drop down the shape fall and check everything. Make sure you don't have any long bits that got tucked behind the ear, what have you. The mannequin's always going to have some stuff pop out. Real people's hairs is going to too, but probably less. That's the graduated bob. That's that technique. That's gonna allow us to build weight as we come up and get tighter in the nape. That's the most important thing you can take from this. Don't take from it the full haircut, even though, you know, that's sort of important too, but mostly this is the haircut, that graduated bob that kind of transitions into that carve out behind the ear that allows you to come up into those higher shapes. This is that classic 20s jazz era type of haircut, just giving you a playful little bob. More importantly than any of that is just that technique of how to build that weight up from the nape up into the occipital bone. There was a couple breakout videos in this haircut. The first one being that point cut over comb. So go check these out. There was a wet slicing technique that allowed us to put carve a lot of negative space into that haircut to get it to transition and move and be more playful, because these shapes can get a little heavy. So anytime I'm doing that, I'm trying to get negative space in there, really bang it in there to get it to move and be more wearable for the everyday guest. The third and final breakout video was that sweep on the bang. That's going to allow us to softly transition across the face. I showed you how to put some negative space in there to kind of let that bang sit back a little better, you know, so it stays out of their eyes, and then just the transitions between the entrance point of the bang into the exterior, or the exit point rather. That's going to allow you to transition into your entrance point of the forward graduation. So just like walking through that, and I showed you a little bit about how to like take out some of that weight to kind of transition those 2 areas and to really soften up those bangs and let them be a little bit more playful. And then we talked a lot about balance, trying to balance the exit point of your strong side with kind of the entrance-ish area of the weak side, and not balancing the entrance point of both, because that just gets into like a weird visual unbalance of the haircut. So taking this away, this is our final product, really working on that graduation and creating that shape on the back bottom of the head.